Donnie and Dolly. The team is supported by ableauctions.ca. Closing your business? We can help.
Friday, and all of our guests today, including Thomas Drance, standing by, brought to you by the people who sponsor DTMZ, and they're proud of it. We're proud to have them on board. The Whistler Golf Club, Al Chris Manson and company. Canucks over the Sharks by a score of 7-2. They're off to Dallas to play the Stars tomorrow, Chicago on Sunday. Here to talk about it all, Thomas Drance from The Athletic, as always on a Friday. Thomas, thanks for doing this. How are you?
I'm doing well. Rick was calling me hot on Twitter last night. I thought that was a little much. A little much. I want you to save it for the weekend. Save it for the weekend.
I misspelled hit, and I put in hot. I said, get ready for your Donnie and Dolly hit tomorrow instead of wasting your time on Twitter fighting with people 24/7, Thomas.
Where's the fun in that?
Yeah, well, no speaking of hot, nobody pulls off a cardigan like you. Like, it's excellent.
Oh, thank you.
That is a
thank
cardigan.
You. I appreciate it.
Okay.
Very nice.
Yeah.
Okay, so much to talk about from last night. But first of all, Kuzmenko gets his 35th. He's going to be the focus of our poll question. How do you measure his 35 goals and, breaking Pavel's record against the fact he's been benched a few times by Rick Tocchet?
Well, I'm not worried about the benching, I don't think. Obviously, Rick Tocchet has a way that he wants to play. He has some expectations that he has for his players. And when they're not hitting those expectations, they tend to sit. One thing he's talked about a lot is, it's sometimes in tortured metaphors, it's like eating the elephant all at once, right? Like having the game awareness to know when a shift might not be going your way, where the time might not be right for making that home run play. And that's a balance that you figure out. NHL players do figure out, and they maintain, constantly. I mean, hockey's a game where, you're both attacking and defending all at the same time for 60 minutes. Like that's one of the things about hockey that make it so spectacular and tense to watch. And, more than anything, I just see it as Tocchet sort of trying to, not pull the reins so much as make Kuzmenko aware of the track, right? Like, you don't want to limit his creativity, but you do want him to understand the game management aspect that Tocchet's been talking about pretty consistently since he came in. I think it's a product of that. I don't think it's anything else. I don't think we'd say Kuzmenko is, even approaching the doghouse. I don't even know if he's in the same zip code as the doghouse. I think it's pretty clear that there's like one thing in particular that Tocchet has been trying to get him to work on. And when that's fallen short, or when he's, had some soft giveaways or what have you, Tocchet's just sort of been like, okay, well, we'll try again tomorrow. It's not like he's lingered on the bench when this has happened. Right. There was that stretch early on in Tocchet's tenure where we wondered if it might be signal rather than noise, but it turned out to be nothing. So now I'm not worried about it at all. Clearly, Kuzmenko's a really good fit with Pettersson. Clearly, he's really excellent at the net front on the power play. My curiosity is, can he do this again, given how inflated his percentages are, given the fact that he leads all NHL players in secondary assist rate at 5-on-5? Can he do it again? And what can he do away from Elias Pettersson, right? I mean, that's sort of the other thing. I mean, we've seen, like, among all NHL players that have played 500 minutes or more, forwards, like Ilya Mikheyev ranks in the top 30 in scoring rate this season. We've seen what Anthony Beauvillier has done since he came over. We even saw Lane Peterson have a ton of success there. I would be curious, particularly given the low stakes of the last 12 games, to see what Kuzmenko could do when counted on to be the driver on a line. Because we know what it looks like when he plays with Pettersson, and it's a phenomenal weapon to have. But what could he do if counted on to be the driver on a line? That's what I'd be curious to see. We only saw it in fits and spurts earlier in the season. It only looked okay. This, to me, feels like really fertile ground for this team to begin to experiment, see what they have in some cases, and that would be sort of like item one on my list of things I want to see here.
Your opinion of Filip Hronek's debut, Vancouver debut?
Really good. Quiet. I thought it was quiet in a good way. That's what you want sometimes from a defenseman. I thought his passing through the neutral zone, right, his ability to hit forwards with passes in stride, something this organization has sorely lacked for 3 years, 4 years, maybe longer, was noticeable. And that's a huge wrinkle for a team that's been so desperate for that. I thought he had a lot of nice plays looking off other forechecking forwards, making his own space. That's, again, the sort of play that this team needs. And I thought his defensive game was fine, like solid. The Sharks are such minimal competition. They offer such minimal resistance these days that I don't think we should look too much into anything beyond saying, hey, nice start. Quinn Hughes' minutes were low despite them losing Christian Wolanin. That's a positive sign. He played well. It was a solid game that showed flashes of what he could bring to this team. But that's all it was for now, right? And that's probably all it'll be over the balance of the season. The real question is, how much can Hronek help you begin to stem the bleeding in those minutes when Quinn Hughes isn't on the ice? Because that's really been where the Canucks have been torched all season long. They really need to be better in that space in particular. Hronek should help. He can help, but we'll have to see it next season.
Thomas, you and I have talked about Jake Livingstone quite a bit over the past few weeks. It doesn't look like he's going to sign in Vancouver. What should the Canucks do now on the NCAA free agent market?
Well, that Malinsky kid, Sam Malinsky out of Cornell. Still looms large for me. You'd love to see this club bolster their right side defensive depth, right?
Yeah.
I know they're over the moon about Filip Johansson, right? I think that he's really impressed them internally, and that's a good find. But you need to do whatever you can to just add numbers and lottery tickets to the right side of your defense core. And Livingston in particular, would have been a lovely fit because he's so different in profile from what Vancouver has in their system, right? Yeah, you think about Hughes, you think about Hronek at the NHL level, but also, they don't have, he would have been easily their best right-handed defense prospect the moment he signed. If they'd been able to get him, Malinsky would be the same, but Malinsky's a puck-moving type, right? The snarl, the size, the defensive mindedness, that's still, outside of Elias Pettersson, the defenseman version, the club doesn't have a lot of guys that profile that way, and they certainly don't have a lot of guys that play like that at the NHL level either. So, losing out on Livingston is tough, but that's the nature of these recruiting drives, right? It's not like 28 other teams didn't look around and say, oh, there's a 6'3" right-handed defenseman available with no acquisition cost. We should have that conversation, right? It's not easy to win all of these derbies. You don't always land Kuzmenko as well as this organization has done at this, since Rutherford and Alvin came to town. So, tough news, but there's another interesting player out there, and you'd love to see them add as many lottery tickets as they could, particularly on the right side of that blue line.
Thomas, John Garrett, the news. You've been on road trips with him. How did you take that news last night?
I was stunned, boys. I was stunned. And, I was sad. Honestly, I was sad. There's a homey familiarity that Garrett and John Shorthouse bring to their broadcast. And you can tell, it comes through the television that they really like each other. They really get along. And, I remember writing a feature about them, and that was something I wanted to capture, was that, life on the road in the NHL, whether you're a player, a coach, or a support staff, it can be a little bit like a hamster or a gerbil on a wheel, right? It becomes a grind at a certain point. And what makes it a lot better is if you genuinely get along. And Shorthouse and Garrett genuinely do. And it shows in their broadcasts. They call a mean game. Technically, they're fantastic. John Garrett's ability to record and memorize scoring chances in midstream, his mastery of the rules. Have you ever noticed watching their broadcast that Garrett always knows if it's been tipped or not? He always knows. It's unbelievable. So they technically call a really strong game. But what made them special was the Statler and Waldorf thing, was the humor, was the way that they'd react if a microphone picked up a swear word on the ice, or if the bench door closed in such a way that it sounded like a fart. They always found a way to have fun. They always got along. And as such, they became very much like the people that Canucks fans most wanted to spend time watching a game with, right? And that level of chemistry, that familiarity, that genuine regard for each other, I think elevated their broadcast, making it one of the best in the league. I don't know how you go on without them together. Like, it's really hard for me to imagine. It's a massive sort of pothole now in how I consider my Canucks watching experience on those games that I'm not covering in person. So, congratulations to John on a tremendous run. I enjoyed working with him. I enjoyed getting to know him. He wrote the foreword on my book. He's always been generous with his time. He's a lovely human being, and he was a phenomenal broadcaster. Just a big loss for Sportsnet and, of course, for Canucks fans.
Yeah, he is going to be doing select work with Sportsnet next season, but not full-time with Shorty like we've become used to. Well said, Thomas. Let's leave it there, and we'll talk to you next week. Thanks so much for this, my friend.
Thank you, gentlemen. Be well.
You bet. Thomas Drance from The Athletic, and just what he said. I tweeted this out last night, what he said about John and just being a really nice human being. Oh. And, that's rare in our business, trust me. Take a look at these studios. John used to come into the Sportsnet Pacific Bureau on a regular basis. He used to do hits with us, especially during the playoffs, especially 2011, 2012 when the Canucks were hot. We did a ton of broadcasts together. And let's forget about the way he treated me and Gary Volk. That was just absolutely tremendous. But the way he treated everybody else.
Nice.
The entire staff at Sportsnet Pacific, we had so much fun together, eating together, getting ready for the show, laughing, and just the way he treated everybody. That goes a long way in our business. And on top of being really good at his job, it's one of the reasons he lasted so long. And again, he's still going to be doing some select work with Sportsnet, games, but not on a regular basis with Shorty.
I used to run into him at Safeway, and we'd be paying for the food together. We'd have chit-chats all the time.
And?
That was good. What do you want me to say?
Yeah, I have
never lived by me.
He's one of these people. Like, honestly, I've never heard a bad word about.
No,
people talk poorly about me. They talk really poorly about you.
I get ripped 24/7.
Ryan, everybody, Cheech, not
nobody
a chance.
says anything.
And trust me, that's rare in our business.